So when I thought I'd make a video on equipment, lifting gear that you really don't want to have, that I would throw out, that I've either used before, I've seen other people use, and that I would not use again, and what we would replace it with, I was deeply concerned that I wouldn't actually have examples of the things that I would throw out because I would throw them out. Well, it turns out that if you have a gym, you've probably got a lot of random equipment laying around, so we've got plenty of examples. So let's get going with some equipment here that I would not recommend training with. Now, some of this is just kind of a champagne problem, right? Like I wouldn't train with X just because Y is a better option, but X is probably still okay. Y is just better. Now, some things are things that I would absolutely never ever train with, like get rid of it right away, don't even consider it. So we'll talk about the differences between those two types of things as we go along. Let's dive in. Thing number one, knee sleeves, all right? 5mm knee sleeves, don't use them. I had these a long time ago, not this particular pair, but this exact brand. It's a fine knee sleeve, 5mm, but here's the deal. When you go and get a 7mm knee sleeve like this one right here, you're not gonna ever wanna go back. So if you're gonna get knee sleeves, and they're very useful, just get yourself a nice pair of 7mm ones. These are Ray-Bans. We'll link to some stuff below. These are Stoic, they're fine. These are SBD. There's a bunch of 7mm knee sleeves out there that will do you very well. Don't get the 5mm knee sleeves. Number two, lifting straps, all right? So here we're talking about with knee sleeves, 5mm is still fine, 7mm is just better. With lifting straps, we're talking about don't ever, ever train with cloth lifting straps. Why do we have cloth lifting straps, you ask? I don't know, somebody donated them. They can be very useful for putting on really tight knee sleeves, and if you want a separate video for that trick, let us know in the comments below. But don't get cloth lifting straps. Your basic, the ones that we make are made out of climbing webbing. We've got videos on how to do this, but if they're made from nylon or some material like seatbelt webbing, that type of material, or leather ones, those are all fine. So these are fine. The problem with cloth ones like this is they will eventually tear. They will tear at a very inopportune moment. Don't use cloth lifting straps. Number three, let's talk lifting shoes. Let's talk about the champagne version of the problem first. The Adidas Powerlift and other shoes like it that have the kind of the very hard compressed foam at the bottom. It's pretty rigid, but in the world of lifting shoes, there are some better options. So if you have already got the Adidas Powerlift, go ahead and keep training in them. I'm not saying go out and buy a new pair of shoes. However, if you haven't bought the Adidas Powerlift, there are some better options out there. You'll note that as I press on the sole here, I can make a little bit of an indentation. Now, is that gonna bother you when your squat's 100 pounds, 200 pounds? No, probably not, but your squat gets above 200, 250, definitely at 300, you're gonna start to notice some squish, especially if you're a good sized person yourself. So this is fine, but I don't recommend that people buy it if they don't already have lifting shoes, because there are some better shoes out there. If you're pressing on the very rigid sole of your shoe, which is the most important feature of a lifting shoe, this is what you want to see. In other words, you want to see no change to the shape of that sole whatsoever. So that's the champagne version of the lifting shoe problem. The more serious version of the lifting shoe problem is these shoes right here. Now, these are my daughter's shoes. She's going to be 3 soon. She can wear Chuck Taylors anytime she wants, even while she's lifting. All right, however, these are not lifting shoes. Don't wear Chuck Taylors. They're great for toddlers. They're not great for you when you're trying to lift. They're great for you when you're trying to walk down the street, but don't wear them for lifting shoes. It makes me want to throw up in my mouth just a little bit every single time. Don't wear Chucks to lift. Number 4, wrist straps. I don't have an example of 12-inch wrist straps, but suffice to say, don't get 12-inch wrist straps. Get yourself some 18-inch wrist straps or maybe some 24-inch wrist straps. There's a lot of good options out there. We'll link to some below, but don't get 12-inch wrist straps. They're just extraordinarily flimsy and kind of silly looking. Number 5, this is another example of a champagne problem, chalk versus spider chalk. Your basic magnesium carbonate, that chalk will work just fine. Almost any manufacturer will work just fine. However, I'm gonna recommend that you use spider chalk. This is a block that's been around for a long time. It has slowly gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and it has not broken. It is nice, it is dense, it stays together. It always feels silly to be this fond of one chalk brand, but man, spider chalk is the way to go. Moving on, barbells. Don't go out and get any barbell that's 30mm or thicker in diameter. You're buying a cheap barbell, or you're buying like a specialty squat bar or something like that. You don't want that anyway, probably. But you want to get a bar that's typically between 28 and 29mm. If you're buying a really thick barbell, 30mm or heavier, you're using a bar that is cheap, and as a result, to give it the needed strength, they had to make it thicker. A lot of times you will see along with these barbells, you will see instead of seeing an end cap, you'll see a hex bolt, an Allen bolt here at the end. That's a sign of a real cheap barbell. Don't use it if you're at a gym, unless that's all they have, in which case I wish you the best of luck. Certainly don't buy it. Now you may ask yourself, why do we have these? Well, These are dumbbells, so it's really not that big of a deal. These are adjustable dumbbells, and the really nice dumbbells cost like 150 bucks, and these were like $30 on Amazon. But they're still cheap. They are cheaply constructed. They'll do the job, but don't trust this for a barbell. The barbell is where to spend the money. I would recommend the Starting Strength bar by Texas Power Bars. I would recommend the B&R bar from Rogue. There's a lot of decent bars out there. We'll link to some below. After barbells, bench. Again, this is kind of a champagne problem. I would not recommend, although our gym is full of them, I probably wouldn't recommend the Rogue bench. It's fine, it's a super serviceable bench. We have not made a mistake in buying them, but if I was to buy another one right now, I'd probably look for a bench that was a little grippier in terms of its surface material on the top. I've heard really good things, and a couple of our online clients have the Rep Fitness bench. I would probably take a gamble and try that one over buying the Rogue bench again. Again, the Rogue bench is fine. There's probably just some better options out there. Next up, racks. Don't get a 3" by 3" rack. In other words, where the uprights are 3 inches wide by 3 inches deep. The 3 inches deep part is fine. The 3 inches wide part is annoying. You're either losing 2 inches total in space on the outside, which makes it more likely that you're going to bang the plates when you rack it or unrack a squat or a press or a bench, or you're losing 2 inches total space on the inside, which for those of you with stiffer shoulders is going to be more problematic. Typically, you're losing the space on the outside, and that's a big pain in the butt. You're just, if you've ever trained on a 3" by 3" uprights, versus 2" by 3" uprights, you found that you're more likely to run into it. Again, total champagne problem, but 2" by 3" is really the way to go when it comes to a rack. Moving on from there, belts. Don't get yourself a lousy belt. So a couple things not to get when you're getting a lifting belt. Don't get a tapered belt. So like this belt right here. It's not doing what you think it's doing. Just get a belt that is the same thickness, that is the same width all the way around. Usually a 10mm belt works pretty well for darn near everybody. It's a great belt to get. In terms of width, you're probably looking for either a 4" belt like this or maybe a 3" belt, but don't get a tapered belt. You're paying for leather that's not really getting used there. Also, some of these belts will have some padding on the inside. Don't get that. Remember, a belt is supposed to help you provide rigidity, stability. Padding does not help with that. So don't get a tapered belt, don't get a padded belt. This actually used to be, to tell you how committed we are to not having a tapered belt, this used to be a tapered belt, and we just cut it down to a uniform thickness all the way across. After belts, let's talk about blocks. Sometimes blocks to pull from. If you're trying to do maybe a rack pull, but you don't have a lousy bar that you're willing to bend, so you got to do a block pull or something like that, or you're doing deficit deadlifts for whatever reason, or you're doing cleans that you're going to drop onto the blocks, or snatches that you're going to drop onto the blocks. You need training blocks, DC blocks. These are very handy in terms of being, they're stackable, right? You can pull them apart, you can put them back together. However, they're kind of on the small side to start with. Also, they're extraordinarily expensive. We got a large, probably about $1,000 worth of them, but we got them for about $300 at a garage sale. Had we not gotten them at a garage sale, we never would have gotten them. So there's a whole bunch of other options. We've got videos on this. You can make blocks out of rubber mats if you only need them to go up a couple inches. If they're going to go higher than that, you can make them out of a combination of wood and rubber, but I would not recommend for most people to go out and get DC blocks. Next up, lifting gloves. Remember that a glove provides something squishy, something that can give between you and the thing that you're trying to hang on to. So it's a little bit like lifting on a squishy shoe, right? You're benching with lifting gloves. You've got something padded between you and the thing that you're trying to push into. So don't wear lifting gloves for that reason. The other reason is because a lifting glove, you're obviously wearing it, it makes the inner diameter of what you're able to grab that much smaller. So it makes you kind of have a chubbier hand, which makes it harder to hang on to things like a deadlift or a snatch or a clean. A lifting glove is a bad idea. I used to have a pair years and years ago, high school or college, I don't know, when I was doing many more stupid things than I'm doing now. I had a pair of lifting gloves. I'd use them as an example. I don't have them anymore because I finally got smart and got rid of them. Last up, a tech shirt, also known as a dry fit shirt or a moisture wicking shirt. Real popular for running because it's real good about wicking sweat away from your body. They're great for that. They're terrible for lifting because they tend to be on the slick side. So it's a bad idea when you want a bar firmly affixed to your back with friction, or you want you firmly affixed to the bench on the bench press, all right? So just your basic cotton plain t-shirt is really your best friend. So let us know in the comments below, what did we miss? What piece of gear, what piece of equipment have you just found invaluable for your training, and it's just super special or important or useful to your training? We'd love to hear it in the comments below. What did we forget? What do you find interesting? As always, we hope this helps you get stronger and live better.